Yo, what up? Welcome to another episode of the Oakland Warriors podcast. I'm Patrick, flying solo. So the Warriors, they lost at home to the Indiana Pacers, a Pacers team that, of course, was missing Tyrese Halliburton, Miles Turner, Chris Duarte, a few other guys. It was a game that I talked about where it was like, this chunk of 5 games, game number 25, could they go 4-1? And they had a great chance to do it, but they didn't. They went 3-2 in that stretch. They lost 112-104. And weirdly enough, the Warriors have never beaten the Pacers at Chase Center. It's like 4 in a row that they've lost 2 different iterations of this Pacers team. And it was kind of just a trap game. That was the first thing that I saw. Obviously, Andrew Wiggins wasn't playing, and he was sorely missed. They started Jordan Poole in his spot, and of course, you lose a lot defensively with Poole in there instead of Wiggins. But hopefully, you get something offensively. But just in general, the Warriors, they just came out. The starters, this vaunted best 5-man unit, again with Poole instead in there. They were just missing everything. And Indiana, even without some of their best players, everybody is rising up to play the Warriors, right? And these kids did too. And the Pacers, they have a lot of young talent. I thought it was just a couple of dudes, but they have an interesting mix of players, and they're athletic. And when you don't have Andrew Wiggins, it feels like last season, the Warriors had a ton of athletic dunkers, right? You could say Wiggins, JTA, Gary Payton II, Kuminga. And now, of course, they don't have, JTA and Gary Payton II. And Wiggins wasn't in this game. So, with the age and lack of athleticism, you could see the Warriors being a little bit, like a step slow. And it took a while to get Jonathan Kuminga in the game. I'll get to that later. But, I've talked about how when you don't have Andrew Wiggins, that how he's been the second most consistent player this season for the Warriors, second best player, in my opinion, even though Draymond has come on really strong since the bad start. But with Wiggins, when he's out, that's one thing. But then even though Steph obviously played, he wasn't himself. So if you don't have those two guys kind of doing their thing so far this season, then you'll get iffy results. I'm not strictly putting it just on those two guys, but it definitely, of course, made a difference. And who knows, maybe Steph, who tweaked his ankle in the previous game, maybe he was kind of feeling a little wear and tear, right? The Warriors had played, this was their 3rd game in 4 nights. And, that can take a toll on a veteran team. So it's a shame that it happened that way, but it is what it is, right? The defense was, if it is Andrew Nembhard guy from Gonzaga, like, I remember him at Gonzaga. I didn't think he would ever be like a decent NBA player. I thought his shot was kind of slow, but obviously it depends on fit, and whatever he's doing with the Pacers, whatever Coach Carlisle's doing with his young guys is clearly working. And the kid just went off. He had the game of his life, and props to him. No one could stop him. And that was actually a little disconcerting. We know that point of attack defense was a question mark going into the season. I personally thought, I'll own up to this, I personally thought that losing Gary Payton II, that there would be more of a committee, a group of guys who could take those duties on. And that would include Wiggins, Dante DiVincenzo, Moses Moody, guys like that. I figured Andre Iguodala would play a few minutes here and there, but obviously he's not going to play till second half of the season. And we know that that hasn't been the case. And when you don't have Wiggins, there's no one to throw at a guy who's hot You know what I mean? And it's not like Nemhard is this crazy athletic guy like a John Morant or De'Aaron Fox. He was just a guy who was on, and you needed somebody to put clamps on him, and there was no one who could do it at all. I talked about how if this team was 4-1, it would tell us something. And, at 3-2, what it's telling us is that they're obviously not there yet, because a team that has a letdown game, falls into a trap game, and then actually comes back in the second quarter with some timely shooting, especially from Klay Thompson, a team like that comes back, that they will start to overrun the Pacers. You know what I mean? Like, that's what the Warriors should have and could have done. That's what we all kind of hope for. Like, Warriors teams of the past would do that. But again, Pacers were unafraid. They're well coached, and they, took the Warriors' punch and kept going, right? And they fought until the end. And some of these habits that the Warriors have had the previous two games against the Bulls and the Rockets, where, they got decent leads and then just couldn't close it out. They had they let both those teams back in. In this case, of course, they didn't have that big lead, but they couldn't basically step on the Pacers' throats. They couldn't impose their will in this one. And it's not an indictment of the whole team and like the, situation, but it's like telling us where this team is at this point. Just one game, of course. But as I said in the last episode, the road gets a little tougher, the schedule. And you wanted this Pacers game because now you go to Utah, you get the Celtics at home, then you go to Milwaukee, then you go to Indiana, play the same Pacers team, and then you go to Philly, right? And that's still the middle of a road trip. And that's a tough stretch. Those are all teams that have at some point in this season played well. None of those are the Rockets. None of those are the Bulls, teams that are either bad or trending downwards. Yes, the Jazz, they're coming back down to earth a lot more, but they've competed this season. The Celtics are the Celtics. The Bucks are the Bucks. The Pacers just beat the Warriors, and Philly is, at least early on, they were one of the favorites. Maybe they've dipped a little bit, but still. So that's a tough stretch. And if the Warriors had won this game, I'd feel a little bit more confident. But I know they'll compete, and I know they'll rise up for some of those bigger games, even the Indiana game, because they'll hopefully want some revenge on this one. It'll be interesting. It'll be telling, because hopefully they don't go 0-5 in that stretch. Hopefully they come out 3-2 at least. But we'll see. The NBA season is heating up, and there are still so many unknowns. Like, will James Wiseman actually be on this Warriors team by the end of the season? I hope so. When I'm looking to get in on the action, I bet with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. New customers can bet just $5 pregame moneyline on any NBA team to win their game and get $150 in free bets if they do. Check this out. Right now, everyone can earn up to a 100% boost with DraftKings stepped up same game parlays. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app, place a same game parlay, and combine multiple bets like which team will win, total rebounds, and more. The more legs you add, the bigger the boost, the bigger your shot to win big. The app is super easy to use. Just pop it open, do what you got to do, and you're good to go. Download the app now, sign up with code TBPN, place a $5 pregame moneyline bet on any NBA team to win their game, and get $150 in free bets if they do. That's code TBPN only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details. I talked about Kuminga coming into the game a little bit later than we had all expected. And instead, Steve Kerr inserted Moses Moody in that spot. And in that second unit, especially with Draymond, Moody looked bad, because that unit just looked even slower. We've always talked about how Moody isn't the most athletic, a little bit slow of foot, especially for a young guy, and against an Indiana Pacers squad that is young and has a lot of length and athleticism and fearlessness. You needed somebody else in that situation. And then eventually, I get it. Moody had played well in the previous game. He shot really well, and Kerr said he wanted more shooting, but it wasn't happening. And even at that point, I was like, man, dare I say that this would be a good game for James Wiseman, because a lot of these Indiana dudes are very similar to him in the sense that they're athletic. They may not be as polished, especially their bigs, but it is what it is, because that's the game where Wiseman could just play however he plays right now and probably do decently. But this is also why we were all like, where's Jonathan Kuminga? Because he is that as well, but better. And he obviously made a difference right away and helped the Warriors come back in the first half. And, I guess, of course, that's a huge positive. And it's not, all of a sudden like, oh, Moody stinks and he should be stuck to the bench. But there's clearly places where Moody is serviceable right now, and, games where he is not so much. And you see some more of those flaws that he has where you can't play him day in, day out at this point. This one burned a little bit because even though at least I didn't overlook and assume this game from the Pacers that it would be a cakewalk, it was definitely a winnable game and something that would have, the Warriors need to collect these, as we all know. And they went from 6th in the standings in the West to now they're 10th or something. And again, it's still early, but it's just funny to see how much that can fluctuate at this point. So you move on to the next one. That's basically it. And at least the Warriors next Wednesday, December 14th, they can try to exact some revenge against the same Pacers team. But the Warriors get a day off right now, going to Utah on Wednesday, and then they get a couple days off before the primetime ABC game against the Celtics. And I'll be honest, in that game and the game against the Bucks the following Tuesday on TNT, right now it's like, which Warriors team will show up? Will they rise up to the challenge and meet the moment, or will they have some, kind of slip and fall moments? You know what I mean? Either way, it's going to be really, really interesting. And, you just move on from this one, right? On to the next. All right. That is another episode of the Oakland Warriors podcast. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Feel free to hit me up on Twitter at Patrick Epino or at Oakland Warriors. Check out our YouTube channel where you can watch this episode, youtube.com/Oakland Warriors. Check us out at oaklandwarriors.com, and be sure to tell your fellow Warrior fan friends to tune in and listen. The Oakland Warriors podcast is produced by National Film Society and is a part of the Basketball Podcast Network. And if you're so inclined, please do leave us a 5-star rating on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And if you want to leave us a nice review saying good stuff about the show on Apple Podcasts, that would be hugely, hugely appreciated, and it would be very, very helpful. Thanks. That's it. Music in this episode provided by Paper Sun. Special thanks to Paul Amardo for production support. See you next time.